Unblock Your Hidden Power. Introduction. You're not broken, you're just blocked. Somewhere along the way, life taught you to shrink, to stay quiet, to bury your truth so deep that you forgot where you put it. Unblock Your Hidden Power isn't another self-help checklist. It's a soul shake. It's the call you've been waiting for to stop playing small and finally remember the fire inside you. No more filters, no more pretending, no more chasing healing like it's outside of you. The truth? Your power was never missing. You were just told to forget it. This book will help you feel again, speak again, and rise again. Not as a better version of you, but as the real one. If you're tired of surface-level advice and ready to reclaim the parts of you that were never truly lost, turn the page. It's time to come home to yourself. Chapter 1. The Day I Lost My Voice and Found My Power. Ava stood in the break room, coffee gone cold in her hand. The words caught somewhere between her throat and her heart. Her boss had just taken credit for her work, again, and everyone around the table had nodded along like nothing happened. For the third time this month, she smiled, swallowed her truth, and said nothing. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her apartment window, Ava tried to sing, a ritual she once loved, but not a sound came out. Her voice, the one thing she always thought was hers, had vanished. Doctors gave it a label: functional, aphonia, a loss of voice without physical cause. But Ava knew it wasn't her vocal cords that had given up. It was her spirit. The silence forced her to listen, to the years of pleasing, performing, and pacifying that had quietly buried her. Power. As she journaled with shaking hands, she traced the pattern back to childhood, to a house where speaking up meant punishment, and staying small meant survival. Her voice hadn't disappeared. It had retreated, and with every layer she unpacked, every memory, every swallowed sentence, something began to stir. Not a sound, but a strength. Not a scream, but a knowing. Her healing didn't begin with speech therapy. It began the moment she decided her voice mattered, even if it cracked. Especially if it cracked. We often think our power lies in how loud we are, how convincing, how polished. But true power isn't performance. It's permission, the permission to be fully seen, fully heard, and fully felt. Ava didn't reclaim her voice in one night, but she began whispering truths she'd never said aloud, and those whispers, trembling and raw, became the roar of a woman reborn. The world doesn't silence you with one loud blow. It happens in whispers. Be nice, don't make a scene, that's not professional, until one day you wake up and wonder where you went. Ava's story is more than personal. It's archetypal. How many of us are living like echoes of ourselves? So, I'll ask you, where in your life have you gone silent to keep the peace? What truth is waiting behind the door of your unspoken words? Your voice isn't gone, it's just waiting for you to stop asking for permission. Chapter 2. The trauma you don't remember still talks. When Claire stood in the middle of her sunlit kitchen, hands trembling as she reached for a glass of water, she didn't understand why her heart raced like she was being chased. Nothing was wrong, at least not that morning, but something deep inside her was whispering louder than any siren, "You're not safe." The truth is, trauma doesn't always leave visible scars. Sometimes it lives quietly in your muscles, your breath, your overreactions, and the choices you never realized you made to protect yourself. Many of us are haunted not by what we remember, but by what we don't. The tone of a voice, the cold silence after a slammed door, the way we flinch at kindness or can't accept rest without guilt. And even if your conscious mind can't recall what happened, your nervous system does. The body is a storyteller that never lies. It reenacts the past in our relationships, our habits, and the invisible walls we build around our dreams. Until we name the wound, we unconsciously serve it. But here's the transformational truth. Your healing doesn't require remembering every detail. It requires listening to the signals your body's been sending for years and honoring them without shame. This is how you reclaim your voice from silence. This is how you stop the past from writing your future. What if the anxiety you've been trying to silence is actually your inner child begging you to finally hear her? Chapter 3. Stop apologizing for existing. Claire used to shrink herself to fit into spaces that never truly welcomed her. She would laugh a bit too quickly, nod a little too often, and soften her voice until it barely registered above a whisper. Her phone calls began with, "Sorry to bother you," and her emails were padded with, "Just wondering if it's okay." She said sorry when someone else interrupted her. She apologized when asking for what she needed, or even just for speaking up, and no one told her not to. In fact, the world rewarded her for being small, agreeable, polite, to the point of invisibility. But it started to hurt, not like a sharp pain, but like a slow erosion, like her spirit was being sanded down, one sorry at a time. It wasn't until a friend gently asked her, "Why are you always apologizing for existing?" that something snapped. Claire had no answer, just a lump in her throat and a flood of memories. Childhood classrooms where she was told to be quiet, workplaces where her confidence was mistaken for arrogance, relationships where her needs were always too much. She realized she wasn't born this way. She was taught to be this way, taught to believe that her presence was a burden, her ambition was a threat, and her voice was something to tone down. But healing began the moment she decided to unlearn all of it. Claire started catching herself mid-apology and replacing it with gratitude. Instead of, "Sorry I'm late," she tried, "Thank you for waiting." Instead of, "Sorry for asking," she said, "I appreciate your help." It felt awkward at first, like learning to walk again. But soon it became a quiet revolution, and in that shift she found her power. Because when you stop apologizing for who you are, the world starts responding differently. You begin attracting people who respect your space, honor your truth, and see your worth without conditions. The truth is, your existence doesn't need an explanation. You were never too much. You were never a mistake. The world just wasn't ready for your fullness, your honesty, your light. But that doesn't mean you dim it. So let this be the moment you stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Let this be the day you realize that taking up space is not rude. It's necessary. You don't need permission to exist loudly, love fiercely, or speak clearly. You are not an interruption. You are not a footnote. You are the headline, the masterpiece, the whole damn story. And if anyone has a problem with that, it's not yours to carry. Claire learned that, and now so can you. Start now. Take up space. And don't you dare apologize for it. Chapter 4. Your energy is currency. Stop giving it away for free. Noah used to think his energy was endless, a well that never ran dry, so he poured it out freely, answering every call, saying yes to every request, staying late to fix problems that weren't even his. He thought that by giving so much, he was proving his worth. But one autumn evening, After missing his daughter's recital because he was stuck in a meeting that could have been an email, something inside him broke. Exhaustion was one thing, but the deeper pain was the slow drain of his soul. His energy, his most precious asset, was leaking out without return, and he felt empty, invisible, unfulfilled. We live in a culture that celebrates hustle, self-sacrifice, and relentless giving, often disguised as virtue or love. But here's the hard truth. Your energy is currency. And like money, if you give it away without thought, you end up bankrupt. Too often, we trade our vitality for people, places, or commitments that drain us, without realizing how much we lose in the process. Joy, peace, creativity, and most importantly, connection to ourselves. The boundaries we resist setting are the very lines that protect our power. Saying no isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. Investing your energy wisely means recognizing that your time and attention are your most valuable resources. When you give with intention, you build momentum, cultivate meaningful relationships, and honor your true priorities. Noah's wake-up call wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a gradual unraveling until he realized he had to become the gatekeeper of his energy. It meant tough conversations, disappointing others, and learning that people who truly care will respect his limits. The world will always try to pull you in every direction, but the secret to reclaiming your power lies in protecting your energy like a treasure, spending it where it multiplies rather than drains. Ask yourself, where have you been giving away your energy for free? Who or what leaves you feeling depleted? What would happen if you chose to spend your energy only on what lights you up? Your energy is not a gift to be drained, it's your power to wield. Guard it fiercely, invest it wisely, and watch how your life transforms when you finally start treating your energy like the currency it is. Chapter 5. The soul was never meant to multitask. Michael's day began like so many others. 3 alarms, 2 cups of coffee, and a dozen tabs open on his computer. Emails, meetings, news feeds, endless to-do lists crowding his mind like a relentless storm. Somewhere between replying to a work message and scrolling through social media, he realized he hadn't breathed deeply in hours, hadn't truly connected with a single thought or feeling. He was on autopilot, a high-speed train hurtling through life without a clear destination. But then, in the quiet moments just before sleep, a question nudged at him. Is this how I was meant to live? The soul, unlike the busy mind, was never designed to multitask. It thrives in stillness, in presence, in the fullness of a single moment, not in the fragmented frenzy of juggling 100 things at once. Western culture glorifies productivity, hustle, and constant action, but deep inside we carry a quiet resistance, a yearning for depth over breadth, for meaning over mere busyness. Michael's soul was whispering beneath the chaos, asking him to slow down, to listen, to come home to himself. It wasn't a call to stop moving or stop doing, but to move with intention, to do with presence. Because every time we fragment ourselves, trying to answer a text while preparing dinner, checking emails during conversations, scrolling endlessly as our minds race, we chip away at the sacred container where our soul can flourish. The soul doesn't want your scattered attention. It demands your full heart, your focused mind, your open spirit. When Michael finally surrendered to that truth, he began experimenting with space. moments without screens, breaths without rushing, a walk without playlists or podcasts. The first time he sat quietly, disconnected from noise and expectation, tears came, not from sadness, but from relief. The soul remembered what it felt like to simply be. And in that stillness, Michael found power, not the frantic kind that burns out, but the steady kind that builds resilience, creativity, and true connection. The world may push us to do more, faster, louder, but the soul calls us back to a different rhythm, one where we live deeply in one moment before moving into the next. So ask yourself, how many pieces of yourself have you given away to distractions? How long has it been since you truly rested, truly listened to your own heartbeat? The soul was never meant to multitask. It was made to center, to align, and to shine through the focused presence of your being. When you stop scattering your energy, your hidden power starts to emerge. Are you ready to stop rushing and start arriving? Chapter 6. You can't heal in the same environment that broke you. When David first moved back to his childhood neighborhood, nostalgia hit like a punch. Familiar streets lined with old houses, the same cracked sidewalks he used to race down. As a kid, the corner store where he bought candy with a trembling hand and hopeful heart. But beneath the surface, everything felt heavy, thick, with ghosts he hadn't faced for years. That was the moment David realized something painful but vital. He couldn't heal there. Not yet, not surrounded by the very echoes of what once tore him apart. Healing is not just about the work you do inside, it's about the space you hold yourself in while you do it. The people who gaslighted your feelings, the places that trapped your spirit in fear or shame, the routines that kept you numbed or small. These aren't just backgrounds to your story. They are active players in your pain, and staying in that environment is like trying to grow a garden in poisoned soil. No matter how much you water the seeds of your transformation, the roots struggle to take hold. David had spent years trying to fix himself without changing his surroundings, continuing to visit the same toxic family gatherings, frequenting the bars where his old wounds were opened instead of soothed, working jobs that sapped his energy and dimmed his light. It wasn't until he moved miles away, found new friends who believed in his worth, and cultivated a daily routine that honored his healing, that the cracks in his soul began to fill with light. Healing asks us a hard question. What parts of your life are still wired to keep you small? Sometimes it's a person, sometimes a place, sometimes a mindset you inherited and never questioned. The courage to say no, to leave, to distance yourself, isn't weakness or betrayal. It's the ultimate act of self-love. Because your soul deserves a sanctuary, a place where your wounds can breathe without judgment, where your growth isn't stifled by the shadows of the past. David's story is a map for anyone feeling stuck in the quicksand of old pain. You cannot rewrite your story while you're trapped in the same chapter that broke you. The environment that once protected your survival now threatens your revival. The first step toward your hidden power is stepping out, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes spiritually, from what keeps you stuck. So ask yourself, what environment is asking you to choose your healing over your history, and what will you risk to answer that call? Chapter 7. Rewrite the story you didn't know you were living. Jackson never saw himself as the hero of his own story. Growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, he absorbed the whispered narratives others told about him, quiet, shy, not the leader type. He carried these labels like heavy luggage, dragging them through school halls, job interviews, and even into his relationships. The narrative had been written long before he could hold the pen, and it was one of limitation, silence, and invisibility. For years, he believed that story because it was all he had, never realizing it was someone else's draft, a version of himself told through the lens of others' fears and assumptions. But stories aren't fixed. They're fluid, living things that change when we dare to look at them differently. One afternoon, after yet another missed opportunity to speak up at work, Jackson sat alone, reflecting on his life. What if, he wondered, the story he'd been living was just a chapter and not the whole book? What if he could rewrite it? The idea felt revolutionary, almost reckless, but also thrilling. He began to question the beliefs that had defined him. Why do I believe I'm not good enough to lead? Where did this story start? Slowly, Jackson started rewriting his narrative, not by erasing the past, but by reclaiming his power to interpret it differently. He replaced quiet with thoughtful observer, shy with careful chooser of words, and not leader type with leader who leads with empathy. The transformation wasn't instant, but every small change in his inner story reshaped his reality. His confidence grew, doors opened, and his relationships deepened because he was no longer bound by old, unspoken scripts. This chapter of his life wasn't written for him. It was waiting for him to write it himself. The stories we tell ourselves aren't just stories. They become the lens through which we see the world and ourselves. When that lens is cracked, distorted or borrowed, we see shadows instead of light, limits instead of possibilities. But the beautiful, liberating truth is that you can pick up your pen at any moment and choose a new story, one where you are the protagonist, the creator, the hero who rises from adversity with wisdom and courage. So ask yourself, what story have you been living without realizing? Whose voice have you been hearing as your own? And when will you dare to rewrite it, to tell the world and yourself a new truth, one that reflects your power, your resilience, and your boundless potential? Chapter 8. Your pain is not a personality. From the outside, Marcus seemed like a man who carried the weight of the world with quiet dignity, but those who knew him best could see the armor beneath his calm, a quick temper, sharp sarcasm, and a reluctance to get close. "I'm just a grump," he'd say with a bitter laugh, but beneath the joke was a deeper story, a story of pain he didn't know how to leave behind, so he wore it like a second skin. For years, Marcus believed that his pain was who he was, that the anger and sadness were just part of his personality, unchangeable and defining. Yet every time he pushed others away or snapped in frustration, a secret part of him ached to be free, to be more than the hurt that shaped him. This is a trap many of us fall into, mistaking our pain for our identity. We say things like, "I'm anxious, I'm a failure," or "I'm just too sensitive," as if those struggles are immutable facts instead of temporary states or wounds seeking healing. The problem is, when pain becomes a label, it traps us in a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we stop trying to grow, to soften, to change. But here's the truth Marcus finally learned. Your pain is not a personality trait. It's a signal. It's a call from your deepest self to pay attention, to care for what's been broken or ignored. Pain is a story waiting for a new ending, not a life sentence. It is not the sum of your worth or the blueprint of your future. When you start to see your pain this way, you open the door to transformation. You begin to understand that beneath the anger or sadness lies a tender heart yearning for connection, a wounded child longing to be seen, and a soul desperate to reclaim joy. Healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means making peace with it, learning from it, and gradually stepping into the parts of yourself that pain has overshadowed. You are not your past hurts. You are the courage to face them, the strength to grow beyond them, the hope that whispers, "This is not all there is." So next time you catch yourself saying, "That's just who I am," ask yourself, is that really me, or is it the pain I'm carrying? Because your true self is waiting, patient and whole, beyond the story of your suffering. And the moment you decide to meet that self is the moment your hidden power begins to shine. Chapter 9. The body is not just a vessel, it's a messenger. For years, Elijah ran his body like a machine. Push harder, ignore the pain, numb the fatigue, and keep going. He thought his strength was measured by how much he could endure without stopping, how little he showed weakness. Then one day, while giving a presentation, his vision blurred, his hands shook, and the room seemed to spin. The diagnosis came as a shock. Chronic stress had hijacked his body, forcing him to listen whether he wanted to or not. Elijah realized with a quiet sting that his body was never just a vessel carrying him through life. It was a messenger speaking a language he'd been too busy to hear. Our bodies tell stories we often refuse to acknowledge. The tightness in the shoulders from unspoken grief, the headaches from suppressed anger, the exhaustion from constant overdrive. They hold the echoes of trauma, the residue of anxiety, the whispers of unmet needs. Yet in a culture obsessed with productivity and external success, we treat these messages like inconvenient interruptions rather than urgent signals. We medicate the symptoms, push through the pain, or blame ourselves for not being strong enough. But strength doesn't lie in ignoring what your body reveals. It's in honoring its wisdom, even when that means slowing down, facing discomfort, or asking for help. When Elijah finally learned to listen, to really feel what his body was saying, he discovered a wellspring of truth beneath the ache, a call to reclaim himself, to set boundaries, and to live aligned with his deepest values. Your body is not a problem to fix. It's a compass guiding you back home to yourself. It speaks in sensations, emotions, and subtle shifts, reminding you that healing isn't just mental or spiritual. It's deeply physical. What if the tension you carry in your chest is actually your soul's way of begging for freedom? What if every pain, every twitch, every restless night is a conversation you've been avoiding? Your body holds your history, your struggles, and your resilience all at once. To unlock your hidden power, you must become fluent in this language, learning to interpret its messages with kindness rather than fear. This means tuning in to the small signals long before they become crises and embracing your body as a sacred ally, not an enemy. When you honor the messenger, you find a bridge between mind, heart, and spirit, a unity that awakens your fullest self. So I ask you, what is your body trying to tell you right now? Are you ready to stop running from its voice and start trusting the wisdom it carries? Because your power doesn't just live in your thoughts or will, it lives in every breath, every cell, every heartbeat. Your body is waiting. Will you listen? Chapter 10. The Hidden Cost of Hustle. Jacob's morning started before sunrise, a relentless grind fueled by caffeine and ambition, his mind already spinning through the endless to-do lists before his feet hit the floor. For years he chased Success like it was a lifeline. Working late nights, skipping meals, and sacrificing sleep, convinced that every extra hour was an investment in his future freedom. On paper, it looked like the dream, a rising career, praise from peers, and the kind of hustle culture Instagram influencers idolized. But behind closed doors, Jacob felt like a ghost haunting his own life. Exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from his family, friends, and even himself. The irony was cruel. In the pursuit of more money, more status, more achievement, he was losing the very thing that made those victories meaningful: his presence, his peace, his joy. This is the hidden cost of hustle, a toll that no motivational quote warns you about. Hustle masquerades as heroism, pushing you to the brink with the promise of someday celebrating the sacrifice. But what if that someday never comes? What if the years you trade for work are years your soul needed to heal, your relationships needed to grow, your passions needed to breathe? The culture of hustle trains us to mistake exhaustion for success and busyness for purpose, blinding us to the subtle ways we numb ourselves through screen time, caffeine, even overachievement itself. The body whispers warnings, headaches, insomnia, irritability, but the mind drowns them out with stories of grind harder. Jacob finally hit his breaking point, not with a grand collapse, but a quiet, suffocating burnout that left him staring blankly at his laptop, unable to summon the spark that once drove him. It was then he realized hustle was never the answer. It was the symptom of a deeper disconnect from self, from balance, from what truly matters. Healing meant redefining success, shifting from quantity to quality, from doing more to being more. It meant carving out sacred space for rest without guilt, for creativity without deadlines, for love without conditions. Jacob's journey back wasn't easy, but it was revolutionary. He learned that power isn't in relentless motion, but in mindful presence. So here's the question burning beneath the surface. What price are you paying to keep hustling? And what might your life look like if you let go of the lie that hustle equals worth? The path to your hidden power isn't paved with exhaustion. It's found in the courage to slow down, listen deeply, and reclaim your wholeness. Chapter 11. Anger is not the enemy. It's the map. When Marcus slammed the door behind him after the argument with his sister, the heat inside his chest felt like a wildfire he couldn't control, hot, confusing, and terrifying all at once. He hated feeling this way. Anger was the emotion he was taught to bury deep, beneath layers of keep calm, don't make waves, and be the bigger person. But tonight, as the walls echoed with silence, Marcus felt the anger pulse. Like a raw signal, uncomfortable, yes, but undeniable. What he didn't realize then was that anger isn't the villain we often make it out to be. It's the compass pointing us toward what matters most. For years, Marcus had tried to pretend his anger wasn't real, burying it under politeness, enforced smiles. But his body always remembered the wounds, the times he was overlooked, dismissed, and silenced. Anger is a language, a deeply human message from the parts of ourselves that are hurt, disrespected, or denied. It's not the enemy. It's the map showing us where our boundaries were crossed, where injustice lives, and where we need to stand up for ourselves. Too often society teaches us to fear anger, to feel ashamed when it rises, or to smother it until it explodes in unhealthy ways. But what if we learned instead to listen carefully, to slow down and ask, what am I angry about? What needs my attention here? When Marcus finally stopped running from his anger and began to explore it without judgment, he discovered truths about himself that had been hidden beneath years of numbness, his unmet needs, his longing for respect, and his courage to claim space in relationships where he'd felt small. Anger became a doorway to healing, not destruction. It showed him where to build boundaries, where to communicate honestly, and where to let go of toxic ties. And that transformation is what true power looks like. Not the absence of anger, but the ability to use it as a guide, not a weapon. So the next time your chest tightens or your voice rises, don't rush to silence it or apologize for it. Lean in. Ask yourself, what is this anger telling me? Because underneath the fire is a map leading you back to your truth, your dignity and your strength. Will you follow it, or will you keep ignoring the signs? Chapter 12. Stop waiting for permission to begin. Ethan had been rehearsing his pitch for months, perfecting every word, every gesture, waiting for the right time to finally launch his idea, a dream buried beneath years of hesitation and doubt. Every time he imagined stepping into the spotlight, an invisible voice whispered, "Not yet, not now, maybe later." That voice wasn't just fear. It was the echo of years spent waiting for someone else to give him permission, parents, teachers, bosses, the world. But the truth is, permission is a myth, a trap we fall into when we forget that the only authority over our lives is ourselves. Waiting for permission to begin is like standing at the edge of a river, convinced you must ask the water for a sign before you jump in. The water doesn't wait. It flows, it moves, it carries those brave enough to leap. Every day spent waiting is a day lost to a ghost that doesn't exist. What if the first step, imperfect and shaky, is exactly what sets everything else in motion? What if the right time you're chasing is just a story you tell yourself to stay safe? Growth, success, transformation. They don't ask politely for your approval. They demand courage, momentum, and action. Ethan's breakthrough came not from waiting for a green light, but from giving himself a green light, lighting his own fire from within and saying, "I'm starting now, on my terms." And once he took that first step, the universe stopped waiting. 2. Doors opened, ideas sparked, connections formed, because energy responds to action, not hesitation. Waiting for permission steals your power and delays your destiny. So here's the challenge you've been avoiding. Stop asking for permission to live fully, to create boldly, to chase what sets your soul on fire. The moment you claim your right to begin is the moment you unblock your hidden power. Remember, the only permission you need is your own. Will you give it to yourself today? Chapter 13. Let the old you die with grace. When Marcus stood in front of the cracked mirror one early morning, he barely recognized the man staring back. The weight of years spent carrying expectations, disappointments, and fears etched into his face like a silent confession. For so long, Marcus clung to the old version of himself, the one who played safe, hid his dreams, and wore masks to fit in. But the truth whispered louder every day. You can't move forward while holding on to what's already dead inside you. Change isn't about forcing yourself to become someone new overnight. It's about allowing the old parts of you that no longer serve to fall away naturally, with dignity and grace. The old you, the habits, the fears, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve, was created to protect you once. But now it's a cage. Resisting this transformation only prolongs the pain. It's like holding onto a leaf that's already brown and brittle, hoping it'll turn green again. Marcus realized that letting go wasn't an act of weakness, but an act of courage, a sacred surrender that opened space for new growth. It meant forgiving himself for past mistakes, releasing the shame, and trusting that what's coming next is far greater than what's behind. In the silence of that morning, Marcus made peace with the old him, promising to honor his past but not be ruled by it. This is the power in letting go. It's not erasing who you were, but choosing who you want to become. When you stop fighting the death of your old self, you stop exhausting your energy on resistance, and instead you redirect it to creation. You learn that every ending holds a seed of a new beginning, and every farewell is an invitation to rise higher. So what parts of you need to be released today? Which stories no longer serve your journey forward? The grace to let go is within you. Will you claim it and step into your rebirth? Chapter 14. Emotional intelligence is a superpower, not softness. When Marcus walked into the boardroom, he wasn't the loudest voice nor the most aggressive presence, but he noticed things others missed: the subtle tension in a colleague's jaw, the hesitation behind a client's smile, the unspoken stress that lingered beneath the surface. Growing up, Marcus was told emotions were a weakness, a soft thing that didn't belong in the world of business or leadership. Yet in that moment, his quiet awareness became his greatest strength. Emotional intelligence is often misunderstood as softness or vulnerability to be hidden, but it's actually a superpower, an extraordinary ability to understand yourself and others, to navigate complex human landscapes with empathy and clarity. It's what allows you to stay grounded when chaos swirls, to respond rather than react, to connect deeply instead of just transact superficially. In fact, the most powerful leaders, creators, and change-makers don't bulldoze through obstacles with brute force. They wield emotional intelligence like a finely honed blade, cutting through confusion, building bridges instead of walls, inspiring trust even when the stakes are highest. This superpower rewires your brain, calming your nervous system and sharpening your intuition, helping you see beneath the surface to the root of problems and the true motivations of people. When you embrace emotional intelligence, you don't just survive difficult conversations or stressful situations. You thrive in them, using your inner awareness as a compass that guides you to wiser decisions and deeper relationships. And here's the transformational truth. Emotional intelligence isn't a trait you either have or don't. It's a skill you can cultivate, a muscle you can train with patience and practice. The moment you stop dismissing your feelings as too much or too weak, you start unlocking a power that no amount of external success can replace. You start leading from your whole self, mind, heart, and soul. So if you've been taught to hide your emotions or wear armor against them, ask yourself, what if your sensitivity is your greatest strength? What would happen if you let your emotional intelligence shine unapologetically in every room you enter? The world is waiting for that kind of power. Will you step into it? Chapter 15. You were never meant to fit in. From a young age, Leo watched the world around him like an outsider peering through a fogged window. He learned early that to survive, to be safe, meant to blend in, to mold himself into shapes that didn't quite fit but were easier to carry. At school, he mimicked laughter that wasn't his own and toned down his wild ideas. whispering his dreams in secret so they wouldn't sound too loud, too strange, too much. He tried to squeeze into boxes labeled normal, only to feel the edges cut into his spirit. The relentless pressure to conform whispered, "Be smaller, be quieter, don't stand out." But here's the unvarnished truth. You were never meant to fit in. That ache you feel in crowded rooms, the loneliness despite the noise, it's your soul's rebellion, reminding you that your power lies in standing apart, not blending in. The world may reward conformity, but true fulfillment is found in authenticity, in the courage to show your true shape, even if it shakes the foundations beneath you. Imagine the oak tree, majestic, unyielding, growing strong by refusing to bend into the shape of the crowd of pines around it. That is you, your unique voice, your unconventional path, your fierce heart. They're not mistakes or flaws, but the blueprint of your hidden power. Trying to fit in asks you to dim your light. Embracing who you truly are ignites it. The challenge is not to silence your difference, but to amplify it. To rise even when it feels lonely. To build a tribe that celebrates your wild edges. When you stop shrinking and start owning your true self, the world shifts. Doors open not because you changed to please others, but because you showed up fully and unapologetically. So, here's the question that lingers after the noise fades. Are you ready to stop fitting in and start standing out? Because that is where your real power waits, bold, untamed, and wholly yours. Chapter 16. Trust is a muscle. Build it with yourself first. When Marcus missed the early morning meeting for the third time in a row, his boss didn't just see a late employee. He saw a man struggling with a deeper battle, the fragile trust Marcus had with himself. For years, Marcus had told himself, "I'll do better tomorrow," but tomorrow kept slipping away under a fog of self-doubt and distraction. He believed trust was something you earned from others, not something you owed yourself first. But here's the truth no one really talks about. Trust is a muscle, and like any muscle, it needs training, starting from within. The little promises you make to yourself, waking up on time, speaking kindly inwardly, showing up for your own goals, are the reps that build your inner strength. When you break those promises even quietly, a crack forms, and that crack widens until you start doubting your ability to rely on any part of yourself. It's why so many people feel stuck, restless, or lost. They haven't built the fundamental trust in their own hearts. Trusting yourself means listening to your intuition when it whispers truths you don't want to hear. Forgiving yourself when you stumble, and standing firm when fear tries to pull you back. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent and kind enough to keep showing up even when it's hard. Imagine waking every day confident that you'll follow through on your own word, no matter what the world throws at you. That kind of trust creates a foundation so unshakable it carries you through heartbreak, failure, and uncertainty. Marcus's breakthrough came the day he stopped waiting for external validation and began honoring his own commitments, even the small ones. He started with something simple, getting out of bed when his alarm rang, and celebrated each success. Like a champion, slowly the muscle of trust strengthened, and so did his courage to take bigger risks and dream bigger dreams. The journey is never perfect, but every step forward rebuilds the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. So here's the challenge. What promise will you make to yourself today? How will you start building your trust muscle so that when life shakes you, you don't crumble? You stand taller, stronger, unbreakable. Chapter 17. Turn your triggers into teachers. When Marcus's sister cancelled their plans last minute, something inside him snapped, a flare of anger, sharp and sudden, that left him defensive and distant for days. It wasn't just about a missed dinner. It was the echo of years feeling overlooked, dismissed, like his needs were invisible. Triggers often feel like enemies, unwelcome sparks that set us off, unraveling our calm and exposing our deepest wounds. But what if those triggers are not enemies at all? What if they are messengers disguised in chaos, offering clues to the parts of us still begging to be heard and healed? Each trigger is a doorway into the shadows we avoid, the childhood hurts we buried, the unmet needs we ignored. Instead of shaming ourselves for reacting, we can learn to pause, breathe, and ask, what am I really feeling right now? What story am I telling myself? Marcus discovered that when he stopped fighting his triggers, he began listening. The anger wasn't just about a cancelled dinner. It was about longing for connection, respect, and recognition. His triggers became teachers, guiding him to boundaries he needed to set and forgiveness he needed to offer, not to others, but to himself. This transformation is the alchemy of emotional mastery, turning pain into insight, reaction into reflection, and chaos into clarity. It requires courage to meet our triggers with curiosity instead of resistance, but doing so unlocks a hidden power, the power to reclaim your peace and rewrite your story. Imagine the freedom of knowing your triggers don't control you. Instead, they inform you, light the way to deeper self-understanding, and fuel your growth. The question isn't, why am I triggered? But what can this teach me? Your triggers hold the map to your healing, if only you have the bravery to read it. Chapter 18. The universe responds to the real you. Jenna spent years molding herself to fit what she thought the world wanted, smiling when she felt tired, agreeing when she wanted to disagree, hiding the messy parts of her story like shameful secrets. She chased success, recognition, and love through masks and scripts, but inside, something always felt hollow, like a violin missing its strings. One evening, exhausted and alone, she looked into the mirror and whispered, "Who am I? Really, beneath all this pretending?" That moment marked a turning point. Jenna began to strip away the layers of what she thought she should be. The perfect employee, the dutiful daughter, the reliable friend, and started showing up with raw honesty. She was scared, vulnerable, and unpolished. But something incredible happened. The world didn't reject her, it responded. Because the universe isn't fooled by facades. It responds to your truth, your authenticity, your courage to stand naked in your own skin. When you show up as the real you, imperfections and all, you align with a deeper current that moves beyond fear and expectations. Doors open, opportunities flow, and relationships deepen, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. The energy you send out when you're authentic is magnetic. It calls in experiences and people that resonate with your soul's unique frequency. Trying to be someone else only scatters your power, but embracing who you truly are channels it. The universe is waiting for your realness, your unfiltered dreams, your scars, your wild hopes. It's time to stop performing and start living in your truth. Your power grows exponentially when you align with your authentic self, because nothing in the cosmos responds more profoundly than honesty. So ask yourself, what if your greatest success isn't in chasing approval, but in daring to be exactly who you are. When you answer that question, you unblock the hidden power that's been waiting patiently inside you all along. Chapter 19. Protect your light like it's sacred, because it is. She always gave her best energy to people who didn't know how to hold it. At work, Alina stayed late while others clocked out. In friendships, she over-explained her heart, hoping they'd treat it more gently the next time. In love, she kept pouring and pouring until she was just a shadow of who she used to be. One night, staring at the ceiling in the quiet hum of exhaustion, she realized she wasn't just tired. She was soul-tired, not from giving, but from leaking light to people who never asked how much it cost her. The truth is, we are all carrying something sacred within us, our light. It's the clarity you feel when you're deeply honest with yourself. It's the gut instinct that says no when your mouth still whispers maybe. It's the joy you feel when you're creating without fear of being seen. But here's the sacred truth. Most of us learn too late. Not everyone deserves access to your light. Some will treat it like it's disposable. Others will dim it to feel more comfortable in their own shadow. And some will admire it only to drain it. That's why your boundaries are holy. Your rest is revolutionary. Your solitude is not loneliness, it's preservation. Protecting your light isn't selfish. It's how you stay sane, awake, and on path. It's how you stop confusing self-sacrifice for love. It's how you unlearn the toxic belief that your worth is based on your output. Spiritual healing means remembering that you're not here to constantly convince others of your goodness. You're here to remember it for yourself. You're allowed to pause before responding. You're allowed to walk away from what distorts your peace. You're allowed to keep parts of your life private, even from people who feel entitled to it. And most of all, you're allowed to shine without shrinking. Let today be the day you declare your energy as sacred territory, because it is, and anyone who cannot honor that light doesn't belong near it. This world doesn't need a more exhausted version of you. It needs your whole lit-up, fiercely protected self. So protect your light like it's sacred, because it is, because you are. Chapter 20. The hidden power was never hidden. You just forgot. They used to call her forgetful, like her silence was a flaw, like her softness made her invisible. But Nia wasn't forgetful. She was surviving. Growing up in a home where walking on eggshells was the norm, and emotional safety was a foreign language, she learned to shrink herself just to breathe. She adapted, smiled when she wanted to scream, disappeared into the wallpaper just to avoid being a target. But here's the truth. Most people never say out loud. When you learn to disconnect from your pain, you also disconnect from your power. And that's exactly what happened. Not because she was weak, but because she was smart enough to survive. What no one told her, though, is that your power never leaves. You just forget where you placed it. It hides behind the lies you were told as a child, behind every "you're too much and don't make a scene." It tucks itself into the cracks of your shame, waiting for the day you get tired of being small. And that day came when Nia, standing in front of a mirror she once hated, whispered to herself, "I'm tired of being at war with who I really am." That one sentence broke something open. She didn't suddenly feel strong. She felt raw, messy, alive. But for the first time in years, she wasn't looking for permission. That's the irony. Your power doesn't need to be earned. It needs to be remembered. This chapter isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the girl who was fierce before they taught her to flinch. It's about returning to the part of you that used to dance without shame, speak without trembling, dream without doubting. That part of you still lives inside. Covered, maybe. Forgotten, probably. But never gone. The world benefits from you. Forgetting, because forgotten women don't rise. Forgotten women settle, but remembered women, they burn. So if you're reading this and you feel like something's missing, let me tell you, it's not missing. It's just waiting for you to pause the noise, to turn inward, to listen, not with your ears, but with your gut. That small voice that says there's more is not your imagination. It's your soul remembering itself. Reclaiming. Your power doesn't start with loud declarations or massive action. It starts with a whisper, a remembering, a decision to no longer abandon yourself. The hidden power was never hidden. It was buried under layers of survival. And survival is honorable, but it is not the end of your story. You were not made to just make it through. You were made to light up rooms, disrupt old narratives, and love yourself like it's sacred work, because it is. So here's your invitation. Stop looking outside for the thing that was never lost. Look within. What you seek is not out there. It's been you all along. Conclusion. You've walked through pain, silence, shame, confusion, and resistance. You've questioned your worth, your timing, your place in this world. But here's the truth that has echoed through every single chapter of this book. Your power was never missing. It was buried, blocked, denied, and doubted, but it was always yours. This book was not about giving you something you didn't have. It was about stripping away the noise, the lies, the generational programming, and the false beliefs that told you to play small. Somewhere along the way you forgot your voice, your right to take up space, your inner knowing. But not anymore. You don't need more permission. You don't need to wait for confidence. You don't need everyone to understand your path. You just need to remember who you are, without the fear, without the apology, without the filters. The world doesn't benefit from your silence. It doesn't grow when you shrink. What the world desperately needs right now is real, raw, unfiltered truth-tellers, people who are willing to show up with their scars, their power, and their heart wide open. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every time you felt like giving up and didn't, that was power. Every time you stood up when it was easier to disappear, that was strength. And every time you doubted yourself but chose to show up anyway, that was courage. So here's your final invitation. Stop hiding. Stop hesitating. Stop asking who you're allowed to be. Start choosing. Start speaking. Start becoming. Because your hidden power, it was never truly hidden. You just forgot. Now go. Remember who you are.